Welcome everyone. I'm Councillor Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation. Please be assured that we have put appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that this meeting is undertaken in a COVID-secure manner. Limited public seating has been made available. However, this meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. The public seating area is not in view of the camera. Can I please ask members and officers to remain seated throughout the duration of the meeting and to wear a face mask covering unless seated? Now, some housekeeping rules. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble by the Queen Victoria statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal's regulations, everyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use their microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished, otherwise the cameras will stay on you. We have all read the report, so please just highlight any developments that have occurred since. Oh, that's for me to say. So I will highlight any developments that have taken place since publication. Right, introductions. Councillor Heaney.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Graham Heaney. I'm the Labour Group spokesperson on Traffic and Transportation.
Councillor Bosher.
Councillor Simon Bosher. I'm the Conservative Group spokesman for Traffic and Transportation.
Denise.
Denise Bastow, Parking Office Manager.
Kevin.
Kevin McKee, I'm the Parking Manager.
Simon.
Simon Bell, Principal Public Transport Officer.
Felicity.
Felicity Tibbury, Transport Planning Manager.
Pam.
Pam Turton, I'm the Assistant Director for Transport.
Andy.
Andrew DeMarco, Principal Active Travel Officer.
And Joe.
Joe Hammond, Senior Road Safety Officer.
And Jane.
Jane Didino, Local Democracy Officer.
Thank you. Have we had any apologies?
No.
Right. Have members got any interest to declare? Councillor Heaney. Councillor Bosher? Good, okay. Well, the first item on the agenda is the local walking and cycling infrastructure plan for 2020 to 2030. And who's introducing that? Is that you, Andy?
Yes.
Go ahead. Thank you.
The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the adoption of the Portsmouth Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan, which is the daughter document of the Portsmouth LTP4 following external consultation. The officer recommendation is that the Cabinet Member for T&T approves the Portsmouth LC WIP that has been developed in response to the consultation as the Portsmouth Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan and Summary Document, and recognises that this document will form the basis of the City's active travel development strategy during the lifetime of the LTP4 policy. As a background, the Portsmouth LC WIP sets out the strategic approach for walking and cycling in the city, supporting the government's strategy for increasing walking and cycling trips. It proposes a range of short, medium and long-term infrastructure improvements, which can be therefore used for future investment, ensuring consideration is given to active travel modes at local level. To ensure the proposals outlined in the LC WIP match the expectations of stakeholders, a 6-week consultation was held between the period of September and November 2020. The consultation itself had 626 responses, and the revised LC WIP summary document has been reviewed and changes made considering the results of this consultation. In addition to a redesign in line with the LTP4 strategy published in 2021, there are a number of changes that took place to the document, including the addition of several maps, an amendment to a range of short, medium and long-term priorities, and a clarification regarding the future iteration of the LC WIP and scheme design requirements. The reason for this recommendation is that by adopting the Portsmouth LC WIP, the authority has an identified set of infrastructure improvements that can be therefore used as a basis for funding covering short, medium and long-term goals. Additionally, the adoption of the LC WIP will ensure that consideration will be given to active travel measures when local planning and transport policies and strategy documents are developed. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Andy. Any questions? Councillor Bosher.
Thank you, Councillor Stagg. Yes, I have a couple of minor questions. This is essentially a strategy document that we are talking about, because quite clearly with the way the local plan is going and the redevelopment of the city centre, and I've seen some images of what's proposed in city centre north, there's going to be some significant rerouting of cycling and walking routes, albeit, and also when you factor in things like Tipner and what's going to happen at Cossam. Is this document cast in stone, or is it fluid so that it can take into consideration those changes as the city evolves over the next 10 years?
So the document itself is a flexible plan. It sets out a 10-year strategy. So we're looking at a range of routes that have been developed and audited. The city centre itself, in particular, was removed from the auditing process because the future direction of what that was look like at the time of auditing was uncertain. In terms of future proposals for developments across the city, the document sets out that latest guidance will be used and sets a precedent that the guidance should be adhered to when designing all infrastructure improvements. So that's a reference to Local Transport Note 120. The routes themselves, some of them will be picked up through local projects, so they'll be taken away from the plan, as it were. They'll be basically answered earlier, and it's a roving document that will continually change as and when either A, funding opportunities become available, or B, the actual layout of the road configuration will change in the future.
Anything else, Simon?
Yeah, I think Andrew sort of answered my question before I even asked it, because I think it was the answer I was looking for, only in so much that I had a meeting with the Regen team earlier this week about City Centre North and the proposed park that's going in, and one of the things that they were looking at was not using the Hope Street, the Wall Dockyard Wall as a cycle route, but essentially coming down past Portico, if you know where I mean, and then going straight across to pick up the park. Now, that's fine, except we're looking at a double dual carriageway along that. And my question to them was, how are you going to manage cyclists and pedestrians going across 4 lanes of traffic, essentially, to access the park? And I appreciate it's safer when you get there, but how are you going to get there by doing that? And the answer was, we haven't really thought about that yet. So I guess my question goes into, are we actually engaging with the Regen team when they're actually looking at these sorts of things, so that we don't end up operating out of silos, them coming up with wonderful designs, and when we actually look at it, the method by which people can get around from a walking and cycling point of view becomes more difficult because of their designs.
Have you got an answer to that, Andy?
Just to say that we have input as the Safer Travel team in the design of schemes that happen across the council, particularly relating to the roads, and the government has set a standard for the way in which cycling should be designed, and we should be held accountable to that. So there is a design guide that's out there for cycling, and we need to make sure that the roads that get designed are done so with that in mind, and the wider teams are aware of that document.
Hopefully that's given me some degree of comfort, because I'm actually looking for the comfort that says there's some joined up thinking going on between departments, and clearly the Regen team are leading on a lot of what's happening around the city at this moment in time. And I have to say, perhaps I'm being a bit disingenuous to them, but answers like, well, we haven't worked that one out yet, doesn't exactly instill me with a great deal of confidence that departments are actually working together to get the best fit that encompasses everything.
Totally agree. Pam, have you got any comment on that?
Just to say that obviously as the designs evolve and become into the more detailed design stages, we will become much more fully engaged in it, because as I understand it, with where the city centre is at the moment, it's still at quite a high level, and we're kind of as they become more granular in their plans, we will have a much more of a role to play in terms of those details and how we can join up those links. So certainly with, for example, the Transforming Cities Fund programme, the South East Hampshire Rapid Transit programme, that's all being delivered in conjunction with the plans for the city centre and how they will all combine. So yes, I fully accept the point that it can often seem that there's that level of disjointedness, but it will mesh as the plans become more focused and more detailed.
I hope that's true. Councillor Heaney.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions, really. One relates to the overall programme in respect to the timing, because we've actually listed various of the projects in a short-term, medium-term, long-term, 3 years, 3 to 5, 5 to 10. And although the budget, the report doesn't specifically mention finance, it says the 0 to 3 is improvements which can be implemented quickly or under development. So could I get reassurance that all the ones that are listed as shorter term in each of the sections are actually fully funded? Or have we yet to find funding for some of these ones? I mean, I can understand the 3 to 5 year ones that we haven't yet advanced, but are the shorter term ones got all identified funding? Or do we not know yet?
In short, we do not know yet. There are a number of schemes within the shorter term and also the medium term that have been adopted through other schemes such as TCF. We are looking at the designs of all the shorter schemes. They are quite significant. There are a number of schemes across the city, but I'll have to come back to you to confirm exactly which ones have been.
I think if I can butt in here, one of the problems I think often is we want to bid for money and we don't have the detailed plan. So having them in here, that means we've got something that can be worked up and then go in and be used to put in for bids, because we don't get all the money we need. I mean, we would need millions and millions to get all the road structure right. So much of it depends on bids, successful bids, and having the right schemes in place and documented so that you can prove that this has been planned is a great help. I think I'm right in saying that, aren't I, Felicity? Good, thank you.
Yeah, I sort of understand the point, but this actually says that, I'm just quote from the report, shorter term improvements which can be implemented quickly or under development, unless there's no money available, it should say, because that's what we're saying, and that could mean that some of these ones which look quite simple are going to get pushed into 3 years beyond. So, in fact, I think there is a concern about these ones, and far be it for me to say, but I think the administration needs to think carefully about its allocations to ensure that we can do at least most of these. Sorry? Well, unfortunately, I don't sit there, you see, I just get...
Sorry,
So when the administration comes to do its priority, it maybe needs to think about that, because otherwise it makes a bit of a mockery of the idea that these are shorter-term projects that will actually be deliverable.
No, the administration does things off the cuff, they don't plan anything. No, it's all been planned, and obviously so much does depend on finance, but also getting the finance, you need to have the outline plans in place. So it has been thought through, well thought through. And this is always the case with transport.
Well, I beg to differ, because planning, you can say we're going to do X and Y, but if you haven't planned to fund it, then you haven't planned as much as you need to. Anyway, I'll leave that there. I've just made my point. I'll come back to that maybe in the future when we discuss priorities. The other thing I wanted to raise briefly was, it's just a comment, and then I'm going to just say something about something that's going on in the part of the country. On page 14 of the report, there's reference to some of the problems and issues in the network, which says that no formalised pedestrian priority when crossing side roads. I mean, we've had the change in the highway code, which obviously doesn't, it's guidance in a sense. It says that there's an expectation that drivers will give way to people who are crossing the road, either when you're entering the road or when you're leaving the road. But there's been an interesting discussion going on up in Manchester. The Metro Mayor and Chris Baldwin, who's the Transport Commissioner, have been piloting the idea of what they call well, they're sort of smaller type zebra crossings, not zebra crossings which actually mark the road with as a crossing point, but don't actually have the full paraphernalia connected with a zebra crossing. And they were trialling this on the basis that it gives a visual signal both to pedestrians and to drivers that there is some priority here for pedestrians. Now, the DFT is not has its rules and is not necessarily saying they're going to do it, but it seems to have some merit. And I just wondered if we were aware of this and whether we might indicate some support for this, because it does have some research behind it. For example, the research they've had done on some trials, I think it's in Trafford they've done it in, shows that drivers do respond to this, particularly if you're driving out of the side road, because it's very clear. But if you're driving into it, it's not quite so good. But now we've got the highway code guidance, which actually helps to reinforce that. And interestingly, if you go to a number of European cities, you'll often find that they do have not zebra crossings, but lines which give pedestrians the sense that they have some priority to cross roads, depending on which it is. So I was just wondering if we'd thought about lending our support to that sort of a proposal, and maybe it could be trialled more widely. And the other thing, it's cheaper. We've got some proposals in the document which talk about raising the roadway at junctions, and that's obviously a good thing to do because it provides a smooth transit for pedestrians and people with prams, pushchairs, and also for wheelchairs. But of course, it is more expensive to do if you want to raise the road, and there is a possibility that that proposal from Manchester could be useful in some areas. You might not want to do it everywhere, you might want to have raised roads, but it gives us another option to try and improve pedestrian safety on crossing road. I just wonder if we might want to maybe investigate more or lend some support to it.
Yes, it's a very good suggestion. As you've said, it's one that's often seen on the continent. To my understanding, the Manchester proposal was given approval by DFT to trial within Manchester, and I'm unsure whether or not it's been extended elsewhere within the country, and that's something I will check and come back to you on. The proposals that we've looked at the time, this method wasn't available, so we looked at kind of introducing level footways so that there was a clear priority given to the pedestrian. That's kind of a suggestion as to how you can look to tackle that, so you have a continuous footway, for example. But no, it's something that I will look into and get back to you on.
Another thing I was going to mention was, I support a lot of what's in this document. There's a lot of good ideas there, but an issue has been brought to my attention in recent weeks about problems for wheelchair users crossing roads and using curbs and dropped curbs. It's come to me via some local issues. I was just wondering, do we have the proposals in here are actually pretty well sorted for being accessible for wheelchair users, whether you're self-propelling or whether you're being propelled by somebody, but we do appear to have some issues, and I'm trying to get some more detail about where the locations of these are. If people in the city are having problems with accessing or getting across roads and using wheelchairs, either self-propelled or being propelled by someone, do we have the facility to deal with those issues if they are a significant problem for people? Do we have, if we need to change the way the drop curb works? Because I think the issue is, from what I had it described to me, is that sometimes if you're pushing someone in a wheelchair and they're quite heavy, the slope can slightly take it away from you and your control becomes a bit more difficult. And this, I think, is one of the issues. I've asked for some details about where this is so I can go and look at it. And I've asked them to maybe, can I go out with you so I can see where your problems are? I haven't come back to me yet. So, but that's the sort of issue. I just wonder, we do have the ability to deal with that problem if it's identified.
So when the walking routes were audited, they looked at the kind of paving types that were used and the way in which side junctions were assessed. So, for example, raising the footway would create a level surface, meaning that there'd be no drop down and no pick back up, in essence, for a wheelchair. So those are proposed within the document. We do have an accessibility software or application that we have called Route for You. So members of the public can access that, and basically they can search a route which will be the most accessible route for them, and we've taken into consideration gradient, curb height, etc., and it will map a safe route for them to travel a certain distance. So that's something we have alongside the proposals that we planned here.
That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that, actually. Is there a chance you could give me a link to it? I'm sure Simon would like it as well, because it'd be useful to...
Yes, so there's an app called Route for You. It's with a for and a U.
I'm not a great user of apps, I have to say.
Or there's a website I'll share with you as well.
There's a website, yeah, that's the thing I can say. Okay, because not everyone uses apps as well, not on phones, especially me. Right, okay, thanks, that's fine.
Is it possible to put any of that on maps? I mean, we're getting into maps in a big way. For people who maybe don't have a smartphone and an app.
To have a physical map.
Well, yes, I mean, like you've got some in here, with the cycling routes, for example. Then people can look it up on the internet. It's just a question. I don't know whether it's possible or not, because there's a lot of work involved.
We can take the maps out of this document and put them as standalone documents on the website.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Any more questions? Any comments? I think some of the points you brought up, I'm sure Andy will take on board. And coming back to your initial point, Simon, about it being flexible, I think those are the sort of things, as things roll out and you come across a problem or something that could be done better, it can be done better. So that's where it is flexible. So I'm happy to accept the recommendations, which are that the results of the consultation held between September 2020 and November 2020, and we accept the results, approve the LC whip that's been developed. And can I say a big thank you? There's a huge amount of work that's gone into this, and I don't know who's involved altogether. Obviously you are, Andy. I don't know if you've been as well, Joe, but lots of people I know have been involved. It's so detailed, it's fantastic. So many congratulations and many thanks. So yes, I'm really happy for this to go ahead. Massive piece of work, fantastic, thank you. Right, next item is various roads, disabled parking places and amendments. I'm assuming, is that you, Kevin?
Yes, Councillor Stagg. Yeah. Excuse me. This report presents the objections we've had to a traffic regulation order advertising a number of disabled bays. There were objections to two of them. One of the bays was proposed in Glenthorne Road, but sadly that's no longer required by the applicant, so we've withdrawn it from the TRO. The remaining one with an objection is in Alhambra Road, outside number 22, which is outside a block of private flats. The resident lives opposite in a council-owned property, but the position outside 22 is the most convenient place for that disabled resident. We've had two objections to it, one from one of the residents of the flats opposite, and one from the managing agent of those flats. The report details their comments, but we recommend that the bay goes ahead and is implemented. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Heaney.
No, not really. This is not in my ward. It's not something that I have very particular specific knowledge. I mean, I've read the report. I think I agree with the recommendations, and I know no local councils appear to have come forward, so I'm quite happy for it to go ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Bosher.
Very similar to Councillor Heaney, actually. It's not in my ward, and really it's a pretty prescriptive route, isn't it, to a disabled parking bay, and the things, because I've noticed what one of the residents in Alhambra Road has actually said about the specific person, but that's an opinionated thing. If they're entitled to a blue badge, then it goes without saying that if it fits, then they can have the disabled parking bay. But it's not in my ward. I don't particularly have a view one way or the other. It's very much a localised issue in the relevant place.
Well, it seems to me that if somebody passes the criteria for a disabled badge and disabled bay, then they should have it. So I'm happy to accept the recommendations for both of them. So that's Alhambra Road. That goes ahead, and noting that the one in Glenthorne has been taken out, yes, and that the remainder of the TROs are coming into operation. Oh, they've come into operation.
They won't when the report was written.
That's lovely. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Denise, as well, because you deal with the disabled bays, don't you? Thank you very much. Right, concessionary fare scheme reimbursement. Right, I just wanted to Simon.
No,
yes.
I'll introduce the report and
fine. Okay.
any technical questions, Simon's here. So thank you. So the purpose of this report outlines a recommendation for reimbursement to bus operators for travel made using the concessionary bus passes in 2022-23, and this is following an update from the Department for Transport Guidance. So as set out in the report, the guidance recommends that from April, reimbursement changes from the percentage of scheduled mileage against pre-COVID to a percentage of pre-COVID concessionary travel payments, and reduces by 5% every second month until the figure is in line with actual concessionary travel usage. So therefore the paper recommends that the contents of the report are noted. Secondly, in line with the Department for Transport Guidance, provide reimbursement to bus operators from the 1st of April 22 in line with what's set out in table 4.3 until the percentage in the table equals the actual level of concessionary journeys, and then reimburse on the basis of actual journeys taken. Thirdly, in line with the DFT guidance, where operators are currently running less than 90% of pre-COVID mileage, as in Portsmouth, keep reimbursement unchanged until the percentage in the table in 4.3 equals the actual mileage operated. And finally, delegates authority to the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation in conjunction with the Director of Regeneration and Section 151 Officer to make any changes necessary within the allocated budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask one question here? What happens if the usage does not reach that level? Because with so many people now working at least hybrid, there's probably not as much usage. Simon.
Yep. Councillor, that's the usage for concessionary fare pass holders, not the usage for bus passenger holders as at all. And we're currently on about between 60 and 65% of pre-COVID for those.
Chair, may I interrupt? 1 second, please. Was there a suggestion that the recommendation 4 would be changed? That was just something that was mentioned. It's about the Cabinet Member delegating authority to herself. It says on the report, and that's what you just read out.
I think that's an excellent idea, personally.
There was some alternative wording that was suggested. Well, you might like to suggest. Do you have that there, or?
I don't. I have the wording that's on the website. That's the wording that I'm using. But do you have the revised?
It's your report. Sorry.
If you have the revised wording there. No. Okay. I think it was delegating to working with Director of Regeneration and officers and Section 151 officer, rather than delegating to yourself. I think was the technical.
Here's what I've got in 2.4. It says it delegates it to yourself in conjunction with the Director of Regeneration and the Section 151 officer to make any changes within the allocated budget. And that, to me, is pretty standard fare for something like this, in all honesty. Cabinet Member in conjunction with 2 senior officers.
Okay. Yeah, I think, it's delegating authority. I think the query was delegating authority to yourself. So I think it's just a slight tweak in that wording, but if you're happy, we'll revise it for future reports.
Thank you. Simon.
I have to say, you sort of asked a question that I'd written down about going back to pre-pandemic levels in that respect, but in essence, this seems a logical thing that the government's asking us to do anyway. So we're just following government. I call them guidelines. They're probably not, knowing the government. So I don't have any particular issue with actually what we've got here. It would be nice, I think, looking at 2.4. Which obviously delegates it to yourself with the 2 senior officers, if perhaps you could keep the opposition spokesman in the loop at the same time as this goes along.
Yeah, absolutely, fine. Graham.
Yeah, I understand the logic of the report, that in order to try and help the bus companies, you don't want to suddenly reduce all their support quickly and that we need to do this on a phased basis. I understand that. What I wasn't quite clear about was if I really understood how the concessionary fare usage is actually calculated, whether it's calculated on the actual number of people who use concessionary fares, which obviously get registered when they got on the bus, or whether there is an average fare and mileage used. I was a little bit confused.
Simon, you'd probably know the answer to that, won't you?
Yeah. I read it a couple of times and I wasn't quite sure I understood it, so I thought I'll ask. It might be a stupid question, but I don't think there's ever such a thing as a stupid question if you don't understand it, so I'll ask it.
Simon.
Yes, Councillor, in terms of the usage, the number of journeys made, that is correct, based on people presenting a bus pass onto the smart card ticket. Obviously, the fare is not known, as you rightly say, so there's an average fare which is used to calculate it, and that's based from a basket of fares, so that's based on different types of fares, what people would buy. So that's where we get the figure that allows us then to reimburse the operators.
That's okay, that makes it clear. Thank you.
Is that it? Anything else? Well, I'm happy to accept those. I don't know. Do we need to change that 2.4?
If it helps, I'm not asking it to be changed, just that perhaps as and when whoever it is just keeps us, just CCs us in when they drop you an email about it.
Yeah, so some, yeah. Yeah, well, I can't think of the words.
If you'd like us to add an additional recommendation to keep councillors informed, we're happy to do that.
It amounts to the same thing, but it's clearer. Otherwise, I'm quite happy to accept that. Good, lovely. That's it. Thank you. Joe, are you here? You're not. You're just here because you've got nothing better to do. Thank you all very much.